Welcome back to another episode of Voxel Heist, a Unity tutorial series where hopefully by the end of this project we'll have a fully fledged video game. This episode will be prefabs, overrides and variants. I'm back from travels and being unwell, touch wood at least, and I've been doing some thinking, and while it would be nice for me to upload a tutorial about Pro Builder, I'm not sure I'll be actually wanting it for this project, so that might be something I do later down the line. But I've had different ideas of how I'll be generating levels, so we might go that route instead. But first, to begin with, we'll be looking at prefabs. So in most games, you don't just have one object, you have dozens or hundreds of similar ones. As an example, for our game, coins, loot, pickups, doors, they all share behavior but look different. If we duplicated everything manually, it would be chaos to manage, which is where prefabs come in handy. Today we're going to be building a reusable collectible system which will allow us to, as intended, make different collectibles that we can easily just drop into the scene. I don't believe that there was a task set for last episode, so we'll just be getting straight into this. So I'll close our menu stuff from the previous episode and do a bit of work on the doors and things. So I'll get rid of that door, and I think want this over here. One, that'll be 2, 3, maybe even 4, yeah. So from our game it's now at that angle. So to begin, I'm going to start by creating a 3D cube, and I'm going to just simply call this Collectible. I'm then going to actually create a new folder in our assets folder and call this Prefabs. And just to be organised, a new one inside of this called Collectibles. So what we can now do is actually drag our collectible from our hierarchy into our folder, and this will create a prefab. You can see that in our hierarchy, collectible is now blue to denote that this is in fact a prefab asset. So I guess at first we're going to talk about overrides for a prefab. You can see that the default, I guess, kind of state that our game object is saved at was the same state that we dragged it into our folder. Hence why its position is these weird numbers, because that's just where I put it. What we can do is still move it around. But you can see that, for example, the position is 2 minus numbers. If I head back over, it still has saved the actual original position. These new numbers, as you should be able to see, are slightly, I guess, bolder. Same with the actual text. These are the overrides. For example, I could revert it back to the original, and it will, I guess, remain as it was saved as. Something we're also able to do is, if I actually drag this out of the floor, I can right-click Position and do Apply to Prefab. This actually updates the prefab instead and saves the changed component. So we're going to create a new script now. And we had loot pickup, which I think we will kind of piggyback off of, but we will make one called Collectible. go ahead and open that up. So get rid of the default text and go to loot pickup, and essentially we're just going to drag and drop, making sure that we implement our interactable interface from a previous episode. And we can just do, instead of loot picked up, we collected whatever game object that this will be called, and we destroy the existing in-world collectible. So this is just going to be like the base behavior for every collectible. Like it will share this function. So this is a pretty generalized way to, I guess, pick something up or collect something. But what I'd like to do is try to have different possibilities of collectibles in this, because in my head we'll have, for example, a torch that the player can pick up, which is what we'll be trying to do today, along with, like, I guess, loot, so whether it's like cash or coins or whatever we have in our heist game. And I'll also say key items, so things used for objectives. With this in mind, we'll first begin with creating an enum. And we'll call this collectible type, but our changes here are going to be loot, key item, and utility. As now what we're able to do. Static? No, because the script then needs to be static. Okay, we'll go with that and see if we need to reference it anywhere. But I'll begin by creating a header, and this will just be our general information. Go with serialized field, private string item name. And we'll also do the same, but we'll actually reference the collectible type. And now we can create 3 different settings based upon the collectible types. So we'll make a loot settings, and I think for this it'll just be the, the value. Yeah, we'll keep the comments. Next will be our header for our key item settings, and I think rather than a description, we'll just have a key ID, which will allow us to, is a unique identifier for key items. And last but not least, utility settings. And for this, it's going to be, I think, simple to begin with. Boolean unlocks torch. So now, as opposed to interact, we can actually have another function in place of it. So rather than just saying we've collected this game object, destroy the game object, what we can do is, actually move that up, we'll do a switch, nope, not that, a switch statement, again pressing tab to create the default template. So with a switch, we're able to put in, I guess, any data type, and based on the possibilities of that data type, we can run different outcomes. So for example, in this, we're just going to use our type. And I think, yeah, there we go. After typing type and clicking off of it, it populates it with our different versions. So we have loot, key item, utility. Now what this means is we run switch, in the case it is a collectible type .loot, it will run whatever code is in here, and then it will break out of the switch. Likewise, if it's not this, then it will go in the case that it is a key item, break out of this. Same with the utility. And default is a kind of fail-safe. So if somehow a type ends up in here that doesn't exist, it will then run this code here. And we can just have destroy game object at the bottom. But now we need to actually have the code to run the different, I guess, variations. So we can do a private void collect loot. And just as an example, we can do debug.log collected some money. And we can then run in the value. It's currently grayed out as it is a private void, private method. It's not being run anywhere, so we can just do collect loot to actually have it appear. So later down the line, we can just do add to the player's currency. I'm then going to copy this and paste it twice so we can have collect key item, collected a key item, and this will be the key ID, and we can say update objective system. Sure. System. And last but not least, we can have collect utility. Well, this one will require a new method, but that is essentially it. So if this collectible has the boolean set to true, that this collectible unlocks the torch. So if unlocks torch, we can do a debug.log the torch has been unlocked. And of course we need to actually use these. And collect utility. And in default, I'm just going to do a debug.log warning unknown collectible type. So in theory, we can now head back over to Unity. So I'm going to add component, and this is going to be our collectible. And make sure to apply prefab to collectible. I'll also actually get rid of loot pickup as we're using our new collectible script. That's going to reload a few things. But heading back, we can duplicate our collectible with Control D, and now we have two variants. So on this first collectible, we will call this a stack of coins, and we'll give it a value of 50. And I don't think we need to populate anything else, so we can go on to the second one. This will be our key item, and this will be a employee pass, and this will be just employee pass. And for our final one, we'll have this as a utility, and this item name will be a torch, unlocks the torch. So if I save this and we press play, I can go over and interact. We collected the collectible, collected some money. I will actually change over because we'll be using the item name instead of the actual game object name. But if I click on this, we collected the employee pass, and torch has been unlocked. Excellent. And item name, game object. There we go. Although it still will be, I guess, beneficial to rename them rather than just have collectible 1, 2, and 3. I guess also while we're here, what we can do is find... Actually, I don't think we have a game manager script, do we? Alrighty, let's set up a game manager. So to do this, we'll create a new script. This will be our game manager. And double clicking on that, we can just clear the default. First thing I'd like to do as creating a game manager is do a public static game manager instance. And we'll create an awake function to just make sure that the instance is equal to this. Next, I'll do, I guess, money to begin with. So we'll print int a private int money, and we'll just make a simple public void add money, the amount, and then the amount of money that was added. As that means we can go back to our loot pickup still here, get rid of that, get back to our collectible, and what we can do is in collect loot, get rid of that, and just do game manager.instance add money and the value that the money is worth. So therefore we have a tally of how much money has been collected. I'm next going to create another public, should I do, yeah, game object. This will be the player, just so that we have a reference to the actual player. And we'll do a public void obtain torch. Actually, rather than the player game object, I'll do torch on player. And we will just set that to active. As my theory is, there are a couple things we can do now. So if I go to assets, one of the models I'd made a while ago was a flashlight. Pretty simple voxel kind of model. And if we head to our player, we can attach the flashlight onto them. So I'll zero out the position and just try and, oh my word, see if we can place it into their hand. So that's 90, and see how accurately we can try and get this torch. I think that's close enough. And from, I think, our indexed 1 episode, we can actually add a spotlight onto this. Although we'll have to make sure it's pointing the correct way. The snap is really high at the moment, I'm not sure why. And we can have it at the point our torch actually, I guess, would produce light. Increase the intensity a bit, and maybe make it a bit wider. I think I'm okay with that. So as it is a child to the player game object, I believe it should move with the player. So we're going to get errors actually, now that I think about this. Oh, no. But yeah, you can see how our torch now follows the player. That's because I didn't actually set up the game manager itself. So we're going to quickly create an empty, call this game manager, and add the same script. and get the flashlight and put it onto the GameManager script. I'll also say in awake, just to cover all bases, we'll set it to false to begin with. And finally in Collectible, we can now just reference GameManager.instance.obtain torch. So now we start without a torch, but I can go around and start collecting things. So we now have 50 coins, we get the key item, and we now have the torch. And just to make it look a bit nicer, if I go into our scene again, I believe this is the torch. Torch collectible. We can actually change over the mesh rendering components. So I can set the mesh to the torch mesh along with try and find the torch material. This is going to be bothersome, however, as of how Magic of Voxel. Okay, it should just be flashlight. No, it's got to be this. So I think I can just drag and drop. Yes. So unfortunately, it's got the standard name convention for the flashlight, but actually I should be able to extract the materials from that. Items, we'll just select this folder. So now it's called palette, but we can call this torch, m_torch, and drag that onto there. There we go. So now it'll be also easier for us to identify in the actual mesh renderer. So now our game looks like this. We have a floating torch. Okay, that's one thing that bugs me still. I'm going to fix it now, hopefully. Which will just be freeze rotation on the y-axis. Hopefully no more spinning. But we should be able to collect the torch, and now we have a functioning torch. Yeah, I think this is all it's going to be for today. We've gone over, I guess, a method of implementing collectibles into a video game. We've got our script here, which is relatively modular and self-contained into just one script, so you don't have to have a lot of different scripts for each individual collectible. Later down the line, we can look at a thing called scriptable objects, which help store information, which would allow us to essentially create different collectibles modularly. Maybe even look into a full inventory system. And yeah, we've got, again, a decent setup to begin with. I'll say, rather than a task for this episode, you have a challenge, whether you choose to accept it. Simply just come up with your own key item. Simply as just create a key item that you think would fit into your game. But yeah, with that, like I said, we've looked at prefabs, we've looked at the different overrides and variants, or dipped our toe into what's possible, and we've created a collectible kind of system which allows us to have one collectible script that does different things. And I think with that we're going to end today's episode, because if you look at the time and date, I'm on a time crunch. We'll be back next week with what we make next week. We're going to be looking at world design, which should be interesting. Yeah, hopefully it'll be interesting. Like I said, we're going to call it there. So thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe, and check out the links in the description below. And with that, I'll see you next week. Bye.